It is now time for Fersan in the Field, Real Issues, Real Solutions, brought to you by Newport-Fersan, Jamaica. And this morning we're joined by Melvin Henry, Technical Manager. Good morning, Melvin. How are you?
Good morning out here. I am doing, it would be fair to say that I'm partially okay, physically okay. But in light of what is happening weather-wise, there's a serious concern.
Yes, there has to be a serious concern because we talk about drought and prolonged drought, but we're also facing hotter and drier conditions. So all of what the farmers have been experiencing over the years with drought conditions, but it turned up.
Yes, it is.
Yes. So lots for us to be concerned about. So I'm very happy this morning that we are touching on issues that can assist the farmers in so many different ways. This morning we're taking a look at beyond NPK, why magnesium can break or make your crop. Because one of the things that I have learned over the years of doing this program, Melvin, is that even in the midst of the most difficult situations, if the farmers are treating the crops right in terms of how they feed the crops, then it can make or break their output. So what is the difference between a thriving crop and a disappointing harvest? And can the nutrients that the farmers are adding or not adding be creating the problem?
Sure, and you're right in terms of when we pay attention to what it is that the crop requires from a scientific standpoint, we give the plant the best chance of producing. So, in reality, any farming system operates pretty much as in everyday life, where success is dependent on us paying attention to more than what we refer to as the obvious parts of a system. So, for example, if we look at a motor vehicle, for example, we pay close attention to the engine, the fuel, the tires. But some electrical components could be failing, and that vehicle will not perform as expected once you have that electrical failure. So it therefore means that one overlooked component could compromise the entire journey for that vehicle. So crop production works in a similar manner, where farmers, as you mentioned earlier, pay major attention to NPK, the nitrogen, your phosphorus, your potassium, because these nutrients are discussed and applied more. And there's a rationale behind that. The plant requires more N, P, and K. But while NPK can drive much of the crop's growth, other nutrients like magnesium, which we are looking at this morning, quietly determines how efficient the plant, for example, utilizes sunlight to produce energy, move sugars, and build yield. And that is ultimately the objective of every farmer, to build yields. So that is where magnesium comes in. It may not always receive the spotlight, and a lot of farmers can attest to that fact. They are fixated on NPK, but it sits as a center of a chlorophyll. So that green pigment within the plant is very important. So when magnesium deficiency happens, what happens is that the ability of the plant to manufacture food actually slows down. Right? So you really need to have that plant as green as it should. As green as it should, it is capturing adequate sunlight to make food and to carry out the entire processes within the plant. So in like manner, this overlooked nutrient, magnesium, can make the difference between whether or not your plant is merely surviving or is really thriving in the field and giving you the yield that you should.
And so interesting because we also as human beings need magnesium.
Exactly. As organisms, we all do need magnesium.
And we also have to supplement our diet, adding the magnesium to the diet.
Right.
All right.
And that is why one of the reasons why it's strange that you say that, because one of the reasons why there is need for a lot of supplements is that we're producing crops, and oftentimes if we do the analysis from the tissue level of the plant, so let's say, for example, we take the leaf of a callaloo, and we were to analyze that at the lab, there's a certain ideal range that you should be finding every nutrient within the tissue of that plant. And that is what dictates how nutritious that plant is. Now, if it is that your magnesium supply to the crop was off below the expected level, then it therefore means that you'll be producing a produce that is ultimately less nutritious than it should. And that is why the need for supplement from time to time becomes necessary, even though we're consuming these diets.
All right, so how can a farmer know when magnesium is deficient?
Okay, so a farmer can detect magnesium deficiency. So magnesium is considered one of those nutrients that is what we call mobile within the plant. And simply what that means is that when the plant cannot obtain enough magnesium from the root zone, it moves magnesium from the older leaves to the younger leaves. All right, so naturally there is a bias towards the younger and newly emerging growth of the plant. And as a result, it sacrifices the older leaves. So you'll start to see magnesium deficiency appearing in your older or lower leaves on the plant. All right? And it is normally recognized by what we call interveinal chlorosis, meaning that the veins on the leaf remain green, but in between those veins become yellow or chlorotic. All right? Yellow. And that is normally a clear indication or a symptom that you're having an issue with magnesium. Because if it is that the plant now has to be redistributing or reallocating the magnesium within its system, it simply means that there's not enough to supply the new growth that is happening. So nitrogen, as we mentioned earlier, is facilitating new growth. Yes, along with your phosphorus and other nutrients. But for that new growth to have the right coloration, that proper green, it needs magnesium. And if it is that the new growth stands the risk of appearing yellow or having those yellow streaks between the vein, what the plant does as a part of nature is that it will reallocate from the older leaves. And that is why farmers, for example, will have a papaya theme, for example, that looks well up until the point that it starts to produce. And once it starts to produce, those new flower, young fruits start to demand higher levels of magnesium. And as a result of that, giving priority to these new growth, the plant will relocate. So the farmer will notice that the lower leaves on the papaya plant starts to turn yellow rapidly. And that is because the plant is not accessing adequate magnesium for the new growth.
All right. So Melvin, does that mean that if the crops are yellow, the magnesium should be applied immediately, or is there something as a farmer needs to be looking out for?
So the quick answer to that is no. In full caps and bold, you do not apply magnesium immediately just because the leaves turn yellow. The reality is that the yellow leaves on a plant is merely a symptom, not a diagnosis. And what that means is that magnesium deficiency is only one possible cause for this happening. All right. So, for example, as we mentioned before, yellowing between veins of the older leaves is an indication of a magnesium deficiency. All right. And the reality is that because the priority is given to the younger leaves, you will have that redistribution. But it should be understood that the yellowing of the lower leaves, depending on where on the leaves the yellowing is taking place, could also be a nitrogen deficiency. You could also have a situation where you have a waterlogged soil, where you have poor drainage. You could have root damage. You could have a situation where the soil pH is too low. The soil is too acidic. that also impedes the uptake of magnesium. You could have a root disease pressure, you could have herbicide damage. The list goes on. So in reality, there needs to be a proper diagnosis as to what is triggering the magnesium deficiency that you're observing. So merely applying more magnesium does not always equate to or result in you solving the problem. If there's an underlying trigger, for example, an acidic soil where the pH is too low, you could apply magnesium until you have no more magnesium. The problem will not be solved. And that is why it requires technical intervention to determine what is the trigger. So that's the diagnosis, and thereby we can fix the symptom that we're seeing on the plant.
All right. We have to take the break for the news and the weather, but when we come back, we'll pick up on this. I certainly want to know what happens if the magnesium level in the soil is too high and what products you have to assist the farmers. Let's take the break.
Okay.
Farmers, you can now prevent and cure fungal diseases with Eradicate Systemic Fungicide from Newport-Fersan, Jamaica Limited. Eradicate is effective against rust in coffee, citrus, sugarcane and peanut, black and yellow secatoka, early blight, mildews, purple blotch in onions, and other fungal diseases. Get your Eradicate at your nearest farm store or at the Newport-Fersan office, 2A2B Worry Wharf Complex. Stay in control with Eradicate.
Farmers, this one is for you. Want to get rid of all those pesky insects, thrips, aphids, armyworms, spider mites, leaf miners, diamondback moth, and many more? Spectra insecticide and miticide from Newport-Fersan is for you. Spectra is safe, effective, and is approved and registered for the use of melon, cucumber, pumpkin, cabbage, lettuce, broccoli, peppers, onions, tomatoes, potatoes, and peas. Spectra is compatible with most pesticides. Spectra available in farm stores. For a full list of crops and pests, please visit www.newportfersanja.com. Newport-Fersan, first on the land.
So we're getting back to Fersan in the field, real issues, real solutions. This morning we're taking a look at beyond NPK, why magnesium can break or make your crop. And can you do me a quick favor, Melvin, particularly for our children? What is NPK?
Okay, so NPK is the short representation for three what we call macronutrients required by plants in fairly comparatively larger amounts when you think about calcium, magnesium, and others. N stands for nitrogen, P for phosphorus, and K for potassium. So that's NPK.
All right, great. Now, I know you started explaining it already, so anything else you want to share in terms of the main reasons why magnesium deficiency occurs?
Yes, it is important for our farmers to have an appreciation of why we could be having, or some of the triggers why we have magnesium deficiency. The first one that I'd like to look at, which is the obvious, is that the soil might just contain inadequate amount of plant available magnesium. And I say plant available magnesium because in reality, you could have magnesium in the soil, but it's not plant available. And I'll give an example. Under certain ideal conditions, magnesium tends to combine with phosphorus, forming magnesium phosphate, several of them. And in that form, magnesium phosphate is insoluble, meaning that even in the presence of moisture, water, it will not dissolve. And if it will not dissolve, meaning it is insoluble, then the plant will not benefit from that form of magnesium. And this is a common situation in soils that are highly weathered, meaning that they have been broken down for years, and we have situations where the plants, over the years through crop harvest, have been removing magnesium, but there's no replacement. So if it is that a farmer has been producing a particular area, and the only attention has been to replace NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, at some point in time, your magnesium levels will be depleted and it will start to affect your yield. The second one is the cause by leaching. So magnesium carry what we call a a positive charge, meaning that just like how you have a north and a south pole and a magnet where it clings at certain point, magnesium clings to the soil and organic matter. If it is that you're operating on a soil that is predominantly sandy, where the organic matter content is lower compared to your clay soil, it therefore means that you don't have the capacity to hold a lot of magnesium. So if you have heavy rainfalls, you're going to have the leaching or the washout of your magnesium. The third one is low soil pH, meaning the soil pH is acidic. And this is a serious concern in some areas in Jamaica, where strongly acidic soil containing low magnesium. And the danger of this is that in acidic environment, aluminium and manganese might be existing in what we call toxic level. So just to give an example, once the soil pH falls below 4.5 on the pH meter, it therefore means that you are at risk of the plant abstracting or aluminium and manganese becoming available to the point where it actually damage the root system of your plant. Now you can imagine if you have an acidic soil, aluminium and manganese is so available that they're damaging the root hairs on your root system. It therefore means that even in the application of nutrients, because the root system is damaged, you will not see the net result in terms of how the plant grows and produces above ground. So pH is a critical thing, and we pay close attention to that here at Newport-Fersan. The fourth and final one out here is the imbalances. So balance is everything. So plants absorb magnesium in competition with other nutrients. So for example, your potassium, your calcium, and nitrogen source like ammonia, they're always in competition. It therefore means that in the design of the programs that we do at Newport-Fersan, what we ensure is that there's a balance between, because once you do not attain that balance, you're going to have serious issues. So again, for example, if you apply a lot of muriate of potash, MOP, without considering what the magnesium level is within the soil, you run the risk of inducing, because excess application of potassium can induce or cause you to have a magnesium deficiency just because of that imbalance. So those are four main triggers, and that is why as a company at Newport-Fersan, our precise nutrient management system, which focuses on supplying the crop with what is required throughout its life cycle in correct quantities, is really the efficient and the most effective way of ensuring that our plants thrive well and produce well and giving us good outcome.
All right. And of course, Melvin, if we learn anything from our human condition is that if you self-medicate, you're going to find yourselves in problems. So when you feel sick, you go to the doctor and you get the appropriate prescription. And as I was listening to you, I'm thinking about the fact that there's so many different, magnesium comes in so many different forms. So as human beings, we know that we hear about magnesium glycinate, citrate, magnesium oxide. Is it the same thing with the plants where you have different types of magnesium? And if so, what are these? What are the ones that we focus on?
Okay, so yes, you're correct, Althea. As it is in the animal world, so it is in the plant world. There are different forms of magnesium depending on the combination that you have. So for example, the most common that we have in agriculture, one is magnesium sulphate. And as the name suggests, it's a combination of two essential nutrients, magnesium and the sulfur. Mm-hmm. Then there is magnesium nitrate. Again, a combination of magnesium and nitrogen. At Newport-Fersan, in the design of our granular blends, those blends that the farmer actually apply to the soil, those dry blends, we have several different technologies that we use to add magnesium to these blends. One of the common one uses what we call the DDP technology, and DDP means dry dispersible powder. So essentially, if you have your NPK granules, for example, a common one that our farmers know, 14-28-40, if we wanted to add magnesium to that blend, all we do in the mixing upper is to apply that dry dispersible powder. And essentially what it does is coats all the prills, the N, the P, the K. So wherever you have nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium being carried in the field, you also have your magnesium tagging along. So you have that application. In a liquid formulation, we do have the unmistakable Maniplex magnesium. This is a liquid formulation. Normally applies foliarly. Now, this is very essential, Althea, because there are times when the root condition does not facilitate the uptake of nutrients. And I'll give you an example. Let's say, for argument's sake, you have a waterlogged soil, which we do have from time to time. In that situation, irrespective of the fact that you might have magnesium within the soil, the plant is not able to remove that magnesium under that condition because the soil is waterlogged. In the interim, pretty much as in humans where there is a bypass, we use the drip in the hospitals or wherever to ensure that we're getting the nutrient where it is required. This is where manifest magnesium comes in. You apply it to the foliage of the plant, the leaves, and within seconds it's in the system, averting any sort of deficiency and negative that could occur in its absence.
Okay. Melvin, you mentioned magnesium nitrate and magnesium sulphate. Can they be combined in the same nutrient management program?
Yes, they can be combined in the same nutrient management program. And I'm glad you mentioned program because the word program here should indicate that in the design of this guide to the farmer, there are several things that we take into consideration. So remember now, a magnesium sulphate is magnesium and sulfur, magnesium nitrate, magnesium and nitrogen. Now, at the time that you need magnesium, there are some questions that we need to ask ourselves as experts. Whether or not we need nitrogen or this percentage of nitrogen at this point. If it is that, let's say, for example, you're at the point where you're doing flowering, the plant is flowering, and you do not want an excess amount of nitrogen, which could actually delay or cause the flowers to fall, then the decision has to be made where we use a magnesium sulphate. Again, you could have a situation where already the sulfur level within the soil is exceptionally high, and this has its implication because excess sulfur impedes how the plant utilizes nitrogen. At that time, the consideration then would have to be, okay, the better option in terms of adjusting this nutrient demand by whichever crop we're working with would be to use magnesium nitrate. Magnesium nitrate is not one that is commonly known by a lot of farmers who use magnesium sulphate. But the more we're doing soil analysis, and over the past couple of months, we're realizing that a lot of the areas where farmers are using magnesium sulphate, it is doing more harm than good because you do not have a balanced approach. And so when we do the soil analysis, some farmers will realize that we insert magnesium sulphate, which is the correct thing to do based on the sciences. And in some cases, we're using magnesium nitrate. And that is on a case-by-case scenario, bearing in mind all of the challenges and the implications with selecting which one. And you could have a combination of both in a single program as you asked at the start.
All right, Melvin, we're out of time. I suspect that you're going to have to come back to us another time to focus on this issue. I love when we do these two-part series because it gives you an opportunity to share a lot of information with the farmers, and we want to ensure that they absorb it. So we have to make sure we give it to them in bite-sized chunks, right?
Yes, you're right. And oftentimes when we do have, and I can expect as customary, once we finish this program, that will be flooded with a lot of questions.
That's right.
And whilst we respond to those on a one-on-one basis, we definitely like to ventilate them in a forum like this. So looking forward to a part two of it.
All right. Thank you so very much. Melvin Henry, Technical Manager, Newport-Fersan. And that was Fersan in the Field, Real Issues, Real Solutions Beyond NPK. Why magnesium can break or make your crop.